we'll start. Okay, we can start now. So, good morning and welcome everyone to the IIMA Communication, Media and Entertainment Alumni Special Interest Group webinar series. As many of you may already know, the Alumni Special Interest Groups at IIMA are platforms that bring together alumni, faculty and students and leverage the collective intellectual resources engaged in areas such as healthcare, education, technology, analytics, public policy, entrepreneurial ecosystem, etc. To bear on some of the most challenging issues of our times. The ASIG platform allows the institute community to collaborate with each other much more intimately and to engage with industry and practitioners in a more multifaceted manner. The IIMA CME ASIG in particular is a group of alumni and faculty of the institute with expertise and interest in the fields, in the relevant fields. And it aims to foster collaboration among IIMA community and the wider world of practitioners to contribute to the space. An important activity of the Alumni Special Interest Groups are the webinar series, which bring the thoughts, views, and expertise of experts to the IIMA community. Earlier in the series of the Communication, Media and Entertainment and Special Interest Group, we've addressed stretching the frontiers of customer engagement through the confluence of technology and media. And today's discussion focuses on the OTT Playbook. As you all know, of course, this is a very important area, very relevant and playing out right now, right in front of our eyes, and it's constantly evolving. There are lots of moving parts to it, lots of different stakeholders, lots of different entities, lots of different types of organizations with different strengths and weaknesses, and lots of opportunities within the environment. For example, the format that they use, right? Whether for the incumbents, it's a different one, whereas for the newcomers, it's a different format. So it's a very, very live space. It's very interesting. And to share his views on this, I'm very happy to welcome Piyush Sharma, Vice President of Prashant Desai Center for Leadership and Organizational Development at IIMA. In his academia journey, he currently wears the hat of being an evangelist, and he's involved in experimentation and acting as a catalyst in the global leadership development space. In this practitioner journey, he's a global tech, digital, and entrepreneurial leader, having held the positions of board member and CEO of multi-billion-dollar organizations, and has multifaceted industry experience across consumer, digital, technology, consulting, and media industries. In conversation with him, we will have Gaurav Khetan, PGP 2007, who has deep expertise in media sector and has been a part of launching Star Sports, Hotstar, as well as the Pro Kabaddi League. Welcome both of you. Now I hand over the platform to Gaurav to take over the proceedings.
Thank you, Anurag. Am I in the spotlight? Yeah. So thank you so much, Anurag and the entire alumni management team for helping us organize this second edition of the webinar series for the Special Interest Group for Communication, Media and Entertainment. The topic is a very interesting one. If you look at the broad arc of history, some historians would come out and say all of human history is about the human species using technology to make their lives better. We certainly have made our leisure life better using technology, starting with the printing press, and everybody could read and engage in discourse and gather knowledge, and then radio at the beginning of 20th century, and then television in the second half of 20th century. And now the last 2.5, 3 decades has been time for digital revolution, which is kind of fructified into the OTT revolution over the last 5-10 years. Some players like Netflix, Spotify, etc., being the harbingers of the new age, and now everybody is into it, right? And we're in the middle of a revolution. We are in the middle of a major disruption which has been ongoing, which will keep on going for the next 5, 10, 15 years. There's so many open questions, right? The most basic questions like, what is the right business model? Who's approaching it right and who's doing it right? Questions for everybody along the value chain. What is the right approach for content creators? How should they approach engaging with OTT platforms? How should they reach out to their own consumers and fans and viewers in the right way? How should regulators look at it? Regulators always typically the last to catch up to a trend and then start figuring out how to manage the new world after the innovation has taken place. How should they look at it? What is the role of technologists in all of this? There's a new technology colliding with the creative world, and it leads to a whole new range of possibilities and a whole new range of creative activity. How should technologists participate in this? And most importantly, perhaps, how should the viewer, consumer, listener in any format engage with it? What does it mean for them? How they evolving? What is their is there increased value for them? Is there increased quality of leisure for them? Is there increased quality of information and knowledge for them? All these are open questions. Thankfully, we have Piyush here who can take over the stage and take us through his thoughts on what is the OTT playbook. Just before handing over to Piyush, to everybody listening, either on the Zoom call or on the YouTube channel, feel free to put out your questions on the chat pod. We'll be happy to pick up questions from time to time. After Piyush goes through his presentation, we'll do an open Q&A session, and we'll be happy to pick up questions from everybody, and we look forward to a very interactive session from everybody. With that, Piyush, hand over to you to take us through your views on what is the OTT playbook. Piyush, you are on mute. Yeah.
Thank you, Gaurav. So hello and welcome and greetings from Ahmedabad. Salal and Anurag, thanks for inviting me. And I'm very, very excited and happy to be with you all today and look forward to an interactive session. I think all of us are learners here, and that spirit has to be there throughout the whole session. I think all of us have opportunities to kind of compare notes as industry practitioners, that some of us who are today sitting on the side of academia, and there is a great meeting ground here. Thank you, Vidhi, also for putting it all together. So I will share my screen and we can get on with the presentation first. I am targeting. Can you confirm, Vidhi, that it is visible? The screen share?
Yes.
Perfect. So the India OTT landscape looks promising. Like Anurag said, lots of players, both local as also international companies, looking at innovative ways to attract new users and retain existing ones, creating an immersive experience with the possible integration of AR, VR technology, new business models, new content strategy, and what have you, right? So I have structured the session about 20 odd minutes on the outer side. We will keep questions at the end. Some of these issues, the key players, models, content offerings, consumer preferences, we deep dive into, while some of these we just about touch upon. Now, India, which is currently the world's fastest growing OTT market, is set to become the 6th largest globally by 2024, right? And currently the worldwide subscriptions are forecasted to reach more than 1 billion within the next 5 years. And India is one of the most interesting, if not the most interesting country at the moment for almost every major player in the space. That is why perhaps Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, so often comes to India, right? India is also forecast to have the 3rd highest number of SVOD subscribers worldwide by the end of this year. So digital consumption continues to grow, some 400 million plus now and counting. India has amongst the highest consumption of online video, global average about 6.8 hours, India at a 9 hours plus. Data drives India. On an average, users are consuming 13 GB of data plus per month. Live stream is now mainstream. It is a mobile first world, which is always on. What does India like? Entertainment and sports. Non-metros are ahead of the curve and more women are owning their right to me time. So it's a women's world and it is now online. So regional languages are traveling the distance. There is less sleep and more entertainment. So welcome to the Indian OTT market landscape. Lockdown was a blessing. Come COVID and you had increased viewerships, new subscribers, newer audiences, all flocking towards this on-the-go content, be it music, be it video, be it podcast consumption, right? So there was substantial surge in terms of content consumption and subscriber count. The OTTs were striving to meet the viewers' swelling appetite for entertainment. So unfortunate but true, the pandemic part is the unfortunate part, but one of the rare industries where COVID has left things not high and dry, but higher and higher, right? So we look at, the segmentation in terms of the revenue model, in terms of the regions, in terms of the streaming type, and in terms of the companies. So in terms of the revenue models, there is SVOD, there is AVOD, there is TVOD, and there is the telco model. So subscription video on demand, the users pay fixed subscription charges to access the content repository, right? AVOD, as the name suggests, they watch content for free and platforms basically earn the revenues through advertisements. Freemium, typical like a Netflix and various, like a LinkedIn or various others. Users watch content for free up to a certain limit and platforms earn revenue through both ads and subscriptions. Transaction video on demand, users pay one-time payment on a pay-per-view basis instead of subscribing to the OTT packages. And telecom revenues is where I pay to the telco charges and receive the complimentary access to the OTT platform. So that's as far as the revenue models are concerned, right? In terms of region, very, very clearly is categorized into north, south, east, and west. Out of these, north, India holds the largest part of the market as currently, followed by the western region on account of perhaps the increasing urban population, increasing number of smartphone users, and growing disposable income. In terms of streaming type, two types, video on demand and live. Amongst these, video on demand is the one that, of course, captures the majority of the market. And that is basically the way in which we could look at it. Now, about 40 plus players, kind of scrambling out there, the ecosystem comprising players operating in various industry segments like independent companies and platforms. So you have Amazon Prime, Netflix, MX Player, etc. Then there are the television broadcasters, right? And they have good reason to and good claim to be here. So there is Disney Hotstar, Z5, Sun, Sony Live, Voot, and others, right? Now, at a point in time, as we know, it was called Balaji that was kind of producing 85% of the video content to all the television producers. So these are the companies which woke up to the opportunity and said that, now that distribution is no longer a constraint, companies with such content presence who thought that they were the ones who actually had the pulse of the consumers have a fair play here. So there is Saregama, there is TVF Play, there is Eros Now, there is Alt Balaji, and there are more. And then there are the telecom companies waking up to the new opportunities. So there is Jio, there is Airtel, there is Vodafone, right? And then there are the television distributors, a Den and a Videocon and a Tata Sky, depending upon which part of the country you're talking about. So India, like I said, is forecasted to have the third highest number of SVOD subscribers. Why? First, large population, increasing urban population, young population, high disposable income, high appetite for consumption. So non-metro audiences coming in. This is what all is driving high adoption rates. There is changing consumer preferences. So there is individual escapism versus family. Remember, all of us used to huddle together around the television set and it used to be a family affair earlier. there is very, very clearly in terms of a preference, a high quality versus a not so good quality differentiation now in the minds of the consumers. And finally, there is smart algorithms driven recommendation engines that are allowing personalized serving of content. So these are all the factors on the consumer side. Now there is diverse content, which means wide variety, no censorship, explicit and adult content, things that have not historically been existing in the Indian market, right? There is high quality original content that builds the platform. There is acquired popular content in the library, which is what adds to the traction. Now, historically, the market has been Hindi-led, but today you have the complete tsunami of regional multiple languages and multiple genres, right? So original content in regional languages is a major game changer. There is engagement, which means interactive viewing and social media engagement. So you have in-app interactive activities like contests or game that can be played in parallel while watching the live video content. So that for you is the content and engagement piece. Now with high bandwidth internet, faster internet access, ubiquitous high speed data connectivity and possibly 5G rollouts, right? There is higher proliferation of smart, affordable and hyper connected devices. On the end of the technology infrastructure, we realizing there is massive digital adoption. What with Digital India, Startup India, and all the things that we're seeing, our UPI is kind of breaking all the barriers, right? So there are cheaper internet plans, there are low mobile data tariffs, much cheaper data compared to the rest of the world, no more than 9 cents in India compared to $8 in the US and $12 in Canada, right? Over and above this, there is access to the best upcoming technology. So that for us is the technology piece. And finally, the key distribution strategies include partnerships with telecom operators, with cable TV DTH operators, with OEMs, right? There is the big convenience factor, anytime, anywhere viewing, whenever, wherever, whoever, whichever, right? And then there is the Bharat angle, the rural pie, growing the pie is what basically it is. So in terms of drivers, I would say, all in all, I think a very beautiful marriage of handsets, of network content, of content partners and content providers. And on top of this growing industry of infrastructure, communication and data consumption is the video streaming industry, right? So this is what is driving the whole market. Each OTT player in the market is finding its own niche and kind of struggling with its own challenges. So from good to have to a mission critical, right? OTT has come a long way. So in terms of content, when we talk about that kind of high quality premium storytelling, international standards and relevant content, consistent supply is a challenge. Balancing the library is a challenge. How do you balance local, national, global, languages, genres, right? Then content discovery on OTT platforms is another challenge. On the content side, content piracy, screen recording, content theft, we talk about it in the next slide. The cost of global online streaming piracy touched $52 billion last year, right? So these are the challenges on the content side. On the subscription side, the low subscription rates, lack of uniform technical infrastructure, intensive marketing expenditure and licensing fee, cost of acquisition running into some 400 plus minus per subscriber depending upon platform to platform, hampering the monetization chain and burning a hole in the pockets of the platforms, right? And consumer awareness, how do you create that for the niche players, right? So over and above this, there is credential abuse. So technology enables sophisticated bot powered pirates successfully validating a login on the OTT provider's page that can lead to premium video content being streamlined without permission or payment with illegal VPN access. There is credential or link sharing. I will gladly share my URL with family members, with friends, or in some cases bad actors, which results in loss of monetization opportunities, right? Safeguarding the user identity, so cyber attacks, user data theft, privacy compliance, right? So all of that is creating a user identity issue. Stream ripping, so once again using sophisticated piracy tools like re-encoders or stream ripping tools to grab the content and redistribute it, right? Geo, device, and network restricted access. So accessing content from geo restricted regions or from unauthorized IP addresses and using VPNs and proxy servers to mask the original IP. Identity threat in terms of account hacks, which is becoming one of the emerging area of threats. ACMI attributes something like 11% of attack types currently to this category. So consumer consumption, content piracy, those are broadly the challenges. But the global content opportunity is real and present. More than 100 originals, more than 20 cities at a point in time where content is being created, thousands of workdays by daily production hires and background workers, more than 30 languages, most of it Indian original content. On the end side, international Emmy nominations, recognition of Indian content, the opportunity in terms of the top 10 media companies in the US having content budgets in excess of some 70 odd billion dollars, right? India can possibly aim for a larger share of that budget. So content basically operates on three levers, right? There is originals, there is content acquisition, and there is sports. So OTT is largely a game of experimentation. Crime, thriller, and horror, why do you see most of the programs in that part of the category? Because algorithms tell us so. Research, insights, trends, everything tells us that the consumers are wanting to watch more of Sacred Games, more of Patal Lok, more of Mirzapur, The Family Man, Special Ops, and criminal justice, right? So originals are very, very clearly becoming mainstream in the OTT world. We finally look at the big daddies here, right? So there is very clearly the current market size is at about $2 billion, expected to reach about $4 billion by 2025, and anywhere between $12 to $15 billion projections by 2030, depending upon who's giving you the projection and what that little definition differentiation is. So very clearly, the big daddy here, almost 25% of it is expected to be contributed by 2025 by Hotstar, which has all the advantages to it. There is MX Player, which has emerged with its original series Ashram, which is globally acknowledged to be one of the biggest phenomenal successes, a fictional series directed by Prakash Jha and kind of catapulting from the non-metros and tier 2, 3, 4 cities of India, a very, very big traction out here. There is, of course, Zee, which was the first one to start with a service called Ditto in 2012, which was unfortunately made into a paid service, did not take off, woke up to the opportunity again when Hotstar started streaming IPL in 2014-15 with something called Zee Family. And now it's rebranded from 2017-18 onwards as Z5, right? So whether and how Zee and Sony kind of get their act together, combine forces, are they able to thereby rattle the market on their independent account? They continue to be, kind of strugglers. There is, of course, the big daddy who's kind of struggling to find their game play in India in terms of perhaps not getting the pricing right, now experimenting with some sachet pricing. So Amazon Prime Video, which has focused on rustic, rural, and non-metro driven content, and content typically seems to be based on the inherent strengths of each OTT player. So Netflix is focusing on originals, Disney Hotstar on kids content and live sports. And then there is, of course, Geo, right? So Geo Fiber, already the largest fiber provider, some 2,000 cities, over 2,000 cities, over 1 million connected homes, no condition, 30-day free trial. Then there is, acting as an OTT aggregator. I do not know what happens to individual platforms over a medium to long-term situation. There are, of course, advantages of such a model. You have single point sign-in, you have access to multiple platforms, and TV programming are some of the advantages that you get to see here. So basically the deal is, I am the telco, I offer you the OTT, a lot more customers at no marketing cost. Therefore, you should offer it to me at a much lower cost than you would offer it to the customer. So content consumption, as we all understand, in an OTT ecosystem is dependent on data connection, right? So telcos in the process achieve an enhanced ARPU, right? It's a sweet box. You could almost look at it as a contemporary value-added service, right? So remember the early 2000s when the telcos were struggling to kind of enhance their ARPUs, the value-added services, those little, your ringtones and various others acted as the ones which kind of gave them incremental hikes. As far as OTT players are concerned, they get more penetration, they get more users. Airtel got some 20 million subscribers, straight away jumped from 1 million to 10 million. As far as the OTT market is concerned, there is tier 2, tier 3, there are the older consumers coming in. So finally, more consolidation. From the consumer's point of view, it is happy story all the way. Connectivity, both entertainment and work, perceived value is higher, right? So that is where it is very, very clearly all emerging into a happy situation. So of course, the engagement numbers are today not in OTT's favor, but there is an increasing number of related tools that allow marketeers to attribute app installs, registrations, session data to OTT ads to help advertisers understand OTT's unique contours and possibilities. So brands are, of course, seeking homegrown OTT platforms as viewership is surging. Z5, Sony Live, Voot, MX Player, even Disney Hotstar are amongst other brands. Very many new players being added. Regular impression buys, then content integration, sponsorships, typical customized content-based shows, etc. So very similar to how it used to be in the television world. So what is up for the marketeer of the day? Building a digital strategy is getting increasingly complicated. So many digital platforms, digital media consumption earlier, after the traditional newspaper, radio, magazine, used to be dominated by Google and Facebook, who continue to be the powerhouses in their own right. But rapid growth of new platforms, consumers spending more time, across platforms, it's a challenge, and the job of the media and marketing professionals is certainly becoming very, very tough, right? So it is important to remember that different brands, even within the same category, see different responses from different channels and platforms. Therefore, it is important to deploy measurement right from the early stages of scaling up digital media spends. The right measurement framework is what could allow brands to measure the efficacy of specific channels, specific platforms over a period of time, right? So test and learn, matched market tests, multi touch point attribution, media mix modeling are just some of the ways in which one needs to test the efficacy of different media channels and finalize the ideal media mix. My sense is that with the emergence of new channels and new platforms, I think it will be prudent to test these out and measure the efficacy and then decide regular adoption. And you have very many others coming in. You have connected TV, you have social commerce, you have programmatic digital outdoor. So measurement should never be an afterthought, but a part and extension of the media planning process. Right, the last 2 or 3 slides, very, very self-explanatory. How do you allow the marketeers to optimize the media channel mixes and improve ROI? What does history teach us? What are the big questions that we kind of ask ourselves before I get inundated with your questions? So yes, disruption, we have all learned by now that it is an occupational hazard. I think coexistence and proliferation on an overall basis is what the story of the evolution of media tells us, right? So that very quickly, I hope I did justice in about finishing it in about the first 15-20 minutes. I think interaction is what is more important. All of us guys at our levels are reasonably aware of what these challenges are, and I'm happy to stop sharing the screen unless there are some specific questions related to the screen. Otherwise, I could stop the screen sharing and we could have a
Thank you so much, Piyush.
Yep. Thank you, Gaurav. Yes, sending it over back to you. I hope that was not too fast.
No, that was certainly comprehensive and certainly covered the entire spectrum of triggers and challenges across the value chain in media and OTT in specific. Of course, we have another half an hour, so we'll probably not be going into so much depth in every single piece of it and pick out some of the interesting bits. So let's start with the business model. Who is best placed to win in the OTT battles? You spoke about different kinds of players, big standalone players who are pioneers, like say Netflix, or big incumbent media houses like Disney, or let's say all of the broadcasters in India, right? There are niche broadcasters who are coming up, specializing in small areas but going really deep. There are content creators and production houses creating their own OTT offerings. And then there's big tech. There's Amazon, there's Apple. They're using OTT as a feature to get people into their bigger bundles and into their ecosystem. Who is best placed to win, or is it open?
Yep. Always put the speaker in a tight spot, right? Very well, Gaurav. Thank you very much. You haven't, of course, mentioned the geo. I'm surprised, but I will not directly answer this question in crystal ball gazing at the time that we right now are in is a little difficult to do. But let us understand fundamentally when you touch upon this very beautiful word called the business model, right? So you look at any media company of any era, the newspapers, radio, television as traditional media of the past. You look at Google and Facebook, and you look at more than 50 of these new age emerging platforms and technologies that are today kind of deriving their identity as a media company owing to the attribution of revenues if you were to do right. My point is that media is fundamentally the game of aggregation of consumers, engagement of consumers, and monetization of those consumers through monetization of that engagement, right? So it is the ABC of media for me consists of the audience, the brand, and the content. Audience is what gives you the traffic. Content is what gives you the traction, and brand is what gives you the growth. So all the companies that you talked about, we will have to evaluate these companies on those parameters, right? Naturally, a Netflix and an Amazon Prime and a Disney, right? They have a tremendous advantage as far as the brand is concerned. In terms of content, it is increasingly becoming a commoditized place. Everyone has got a more than $15-20 billion budget worldwide, right? Whether it is Netflix, Amazon Prime, and what have you, right? Disney is used to this idea, was not historically used, but let's say disruption has kind of forced them into that space. So beyond a point, it will become commoditized. And traffic is something which is a direct function, as we are increasingly realizing, of a venture fund driven model, so that you can, so long that you can pump enough money into it, you can have good enough traffic, and perhaps a belief into a path to profitability at the end of it all is what drives them all together. So I would say I would still wish to put my monies on a Netflix and Amazon Prime as two international players, a Disney Hotstar because of a very unique combination. On the one hand, the sports powerhouse that it is. On the other hand, all access to all kinds of international content across the board for a Disney, and the Hotstar angle, which kind of brings in all the Indian content from Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi to, catalog content, all kinds of content. And there is MX Player to take note of. So I guess the future playbook is going to consist of several playbooks. But other than this, Geo is a very, very important player to watch, as a unique entrant and a unique vantage position that it has.
And I think very sporting of you to actually call out a few names, despite me pinning you down and saying they are going to be likely winners. But like you said, it's probably a venture funded kind of a model moving slowly towards a path to profitability, and hopefully all of them will find a path to profitability, which means finding the right revenue streams and prioritizing them. The big debate in the world of OTT today is subscription revenues versus advertising revenues. You spoke about SVOD and AVOD. The big news, of course, over the last couple of weeks month has been Netflix talking about entering the advertising, and I think a severe dent to one of the big three pillars of brand that you mentioned, right? They built a brand around being no ads, come and enjoy a clean user experience, great content kind of a brand, but now they are open to having advertising on. On the other end, we saw Jio picking up the rights for the IPL for $3 billion over 5 years for digital only. And certainly that cannot be worked out on a subscription only model. On this subscription versus advertising debate or experimentation or the unknown land that we're moving towards, what are your views? What do you see as challenges in either model? How do you balance the two out?
You mean between subscription and advertising, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I think currently the market is stacked in favor of advertising. It's a 70-30 kind of ratio, and MPA predicts that by 2025 it will start becoming more balanced. I do treat the OTT to be more equivalent to television than, let us say, a newspaper radio of the past, right? So in television, we are aware that unlike newspapers, where the cost of the ink does not even recover the price at which a Times of India retails, right? Those 24 heavy duty pages. It's not a 80-20, 75-25 advertising and subscription driven revenues. It will over a period of time be more like subscription revenues driven situation, becoming slightly higher. I think it's a lag that we are facing, which is where advertising has kind of established itself as a very successful model over the last about 100 odd years. But in television, if you look at it, almost 55-45 kind of ratio between ad and subscription exists. Yes, they've been able to get the subscribers to pay, and in the process kind of completely disrupt the television industry and establish themselves as a newer form of television, is what I look at it as, metamorphosing into a modern media technology network, as I kind of call it. But I think over a period of time, there will be slightly greater balance, with advertising still leading the way. I think companies will always have an interest in kind of trying to get to this high appetite for consumption, high, affordable income kind of consumer.
Right.
Yeah.
Certainly, Disney Plus charges $7 per month or something like that in the US, but their ARPU in India would be far less than that, perhaps a hundredth of that in India, right? So
that's a smart move, Gaurav, because this is where Netflix kind of struggles. This is where Netflix in its pricing strategy kind of perhaps did not get it right. I would only treat Netflix's pricing strategy to be a shade better than Zee's original ditto strategy, right? So it's not a wise thing. It's a very price sensitive market. It's a very value for money market. And people are, no matter what levels we are at, we are very, very discerning consumers when it comes to pricing.
Right. So talking of discerning consumers, let's segue into how consumers are themselves changing, because is a consumption pattern and consumption taste and what people, our viewers, are open to consuming changing because of the OTT revolution?
I would say what they are consuming per se is not changing. There are shifts. There is shift in the way news is consumed today, in the consumption of news, where the consumers have changed from passive to active. On the one hand, there is the advantage of citizen journalism and content creation. On the other hand, there is the disadvantage of the verification process to me as a consumer. There is shift in entertainment consumption also, where digital media and social media have content ranging from, politics to entertainment, health to automobiles, social issues to gossip. Within it also there is niche categories. So within health you would have fitness, nutrition, yoga, body positivity, etc. So this is what is leading to community led content, also known as the phenomena of tribalism, right? Then there is content segmentation and changing consumer behavior. So on the one hand, I am researching by reading several movie reviews, right? I'm improving and empowering myself as a consumer. I'm engaging in interactive media. I like Amazon Prime more because right there and then I don't have to move to a different medium. I can know a little bit more about the actors and their performances elsewhere, right? So user experience is becoming a key thing, and which is where graphics, aesthetics, speed of communications, app interface, etc. are influencing points. There is medium and consumer transition. So there is, earlier you had to have time to write and time to print, and this ensured that everything was confirmed and cross-checked. Today you have all kinds of challenges, right? The narrative is becoming more and more transmedia. So consumer is consuming it wherever, whenever, whichever, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of actual so it's only the platforms that have changed. The options are many. It's a choice of abundance now. It's a challenge of abundance from the consumer's point of view. Sometimes half an hour is wasted in not being able to decide what to watch, right? But in terms of what they are consuming, I think the drift is mostly the same. Mostly they are watching more than reading for a majority of them. So those things that we saw over the last 1 century of gradual movement from non-interactive mediums to interactive mediums like radio and television continue to be trends that continue to go on. So technology actually comes after your life. You first decide how you want to spend your entertainment, how you want to spend your evening, your life, right? And then technology is just an input.
Right. So broadly, people will keep being interested in what they have been interested in for the last 100 years, but how they engage is going to change.
Yep.
Are platforms like, given this and given that we believe advertising will still be the dominant and probably more lucrative revenue stream, are platforms like TikTok or YouTube or Facebook, who definitely have a much better ad tech engine, who definitely have ability to create community-led content, are they OTT players? Are they at an advantage compared to curated content platforms, say like Netflix or Prime or Hotstar or Z5?
Yeah, so it's everyone has a niche and we have to all respect that. Those are different business models. That is the passion or the creator economy, right? But I would any day, let's say, so there is very clearly the highest standard of it, which is what I know I will get out of a Dolby Vision produced by a Steven Spielberg or a Sanjay Leela Bhansali, by roping in Ranveer Singh, etc. And I will take out for this purpose of 1 hour, 2 hours in the evening and really relax. And there is the on-the-go content, which is so engaging in terms of dog porn, in terms of all kinds of fancy, funny comedy stuff, which I could just consume over 30 seconds and make myself feel good, which is where passion economy and creator economy kind of comes into being. So I would say that those will all continue to exist. There is no competition as far as are they OTT? To my knowledge, to my understanding, I would categorize them as streaming companies. OTT is basically in the business of disrupting distribution, right? And to the extent that it is happening through technology, yes. And to the extent that content is being produced, maybe it is not by the media owners themselves, but by the end consumers themselves, it still is content. There is no currency to it, right? So yes, to me, they are OTT and all of them have different pain points that they're trying to address and in the process trying to figure out their business model.
Right. Great. So moving from consumers to how content creators should look at, ranging from the creator sitting at home and creating their own podcast to Steven Spielberg and Sanjay Leela Bhansali. How does their life change because of the OTT platform? Is it the same old world where they were creating their own vision into a video or a movie or a series? Or what they do also changes because of how the world is changing?
I think everyone is AI and ML is driving a situation where these platforms are very well, analytically aware as to what the consumer is wanting, and all of them are taking their positions. So creating premium content, right? Netflix is what is leading here. Leveraging existing content, right? Disney is kind of leading here. Live streaming sports, Hotstar again. Renting out content, think Disney and Hotstar. Acquiring new content, MGM acquired Amazon, right? So it's interesting to see Netflix on originals, stress, Amazon Prime Video on rustic, rural, non-metro driven content, Disney Hotstar on kids content and live sports. It is all driven by how they wish to position themselves. So take it like any other business, right? There is the Louis Vuittons of the world. There is the Dharavi ke regular 1000 rupee, 300 rupee value, super value for money market that they are catering to. Each one of them, and all Balaji is catering to a totally different audience versus a Netflix. And that, I think, is what is determining what and how of the content. So content very clearly over a period of time, to my knowledge, will become more and more commoditized, even in the niche categories, right? So marketing is what also needs to be looked at, and the overall brand experience is something that is interesting to look at. For example, if you look at what Netflix creates content on YouTube and advertising on the cable and satellite channels for its content, right? Amazon Prime is doing, they're doing college and community driven events. So everyone, the way they're trying to rope in these consumers is also different.
Right. And let's say a hypothetical case. Let's take the case of SS Rajamouli, who's created one of the biggest blockbusters in RRR and before that, the Bahubali series. If he comes to you for advice and says, I'm creating RRR 2, should I make and then sell, or should I make and then create my own OTT platform and distribute directly? There are only 1,500 screens, cinema screens in India. I can reach out to millions of homes and possibly make more money by creating my own OTT platform. Is that a sensible way of thinking for superstar creators?
We may see that phenomena. It's interesting that you kind of allude to that. In the specific example that we are discussing, I wouldn't expect him to, because I think he's a very passionate creator at heart. What I would and I could predict is that you may have a situation of his integrating VR and AR even more, where next time a Kutappa may actually be sitting with me, or an avatar of a Kutappa and me, my avatar may be a party of be in a watch party with avatars of my friends based on my current mood. And it's Kutappa who may be having an exclusive conversation with me. So that which technology will enable, but I would expect him to continue to do the great thing that he does, not because he's got success in it, but I know that he derives a meaningful existence out of it.
Right. So you can ask Kutappa the all-important question directly.
Absolutely. Who killed him? And
Correct.
why was, yeah.
So, right. So I think it is analogous to any place where there are people who have the creator mindset or the innovator mindset, and they don't want to run the business per se. They want to create a great movie and tell a great story, or I want to create the next invention in technology and may not want to run the company myself. So that will always stay, as there are different kinds of people and personalities. I guess that will lead to some people being great creators, but handing off the business side to big OTT players, big production houses. Moving on, you spoke about technology, right? Kutappa could be sitting with any one of us. Is technology the biggest moat? Interesting that when you mentioned about the three things that will create differentiation for OTT platforms, you spoke about audience, you spoke about brand, you spoke about content. Will you add technology to it, or
Yes. So I called it the D. I said ABC, audience, brand, content, and the D is the digital part. So while the content has been the king for the OTT platforms, I think technology remains an underdog. So super fast and smart technological production, starring encryption, cloud, compression, CDN, decoding, these remain key technology assets, providing a strong foundation to build upon. And platforms have continuously been introducing new features like voice tags to search titles, leveraging machine learning to amplify sending personalized notifications and recommendations to me. So they've been investing heavily on the technology front, as much as 1/4 of their expenditure. And this is what is underlining the importance of technology. I do believe big data will have a major role to play here, and blockchain also over a period of time will have a big role to play here.
Can you speak a little bit more about the blockchain?
So, so artificial intelligence is being enabled fundamentally through big data, through the computing systems, and through the algorithms, which is what codes are all about. Now, with the evolution of OTT platforms, blockchain is basically looking at, let's say, recording the data that makes it difficult to alter, in very simple terms. So the idea that no central body has singular control over the data or content, and therefore it cannot be deleted or altered without being recorded, is where blockchain kind of comes into being. So if you have the value of digital content that is slowly decreasing, because the value of content can usually be determined through the difficulty of its accessibility. Now here, digital content that is becoming easily available is happening because of open source environment. So it will become worthless to the creator over a period of time, which is common in OTT content. Now, there is no way to track the copyright infringement because you do not have the right set of framework and tools for content protection. So can blockchain come in and, based on digital watermark and a blockchain based system, allow only authorized users to use online content and provide original multimedia content, right? So that is one way. Another is DRMs, digital rights management solutions, Now they can support diverse models such as music download, streaming services, multiple device ownership. How blockchain can bring self-executing smart contracts that can really make the DRM for OTT industry, music, videos, these can be made transparent, accessible, easy to understand, and can enable monetization. So those would be some of the ways.
Right. So I think there are a lot of questions coming in. We'll open up to some questions from listeners, and then at the end, maybe we'll give you a opportunity to sum the session, saying what is the future, where are we going from here. There's a question from Ramesh Wag on YouTube saying, can you discuss the business strategy for traditional cinema halls, keeping in mind the impact of OTT? So the big question of the theater and cinema distribution value chain.
Yeah, is Professor Kandaswamy around? If he is with he will probably be better suited to do it, but I will attempt it. That I think is a very important question. But like I said, all of these, they will all continue to be, because the mantra of content is whatever, whenever, wherever. So there are times when I want to watch something on the go. There are times when I want to watch something on demand. There are times when I want to go with the family into a multiplex and an entertainment evening with the family, and sit back and relax it on the big screen, right? So I do believe that the both of them will continue to coexist. I do not foresee and agree with the foretelling of death of, let us say, theaters or exhibition situations. I am very, very clearly seeing a future holding out for OTT in its own right, and at the same time theaters playing out the big ticket thing. So what the multiplexes did was that from the big screen to multiplex, you had the opportunity to go and watch a niche movie also on a multiplex. I think it will be a trend backwards when big screens or multiplex screens will now become more suited for big star, big budget films and all. Today you find that a movie that doesn't really do well in theaters very quickly comes to the OTT platform. So in a week, 10 days, you have Samrat Prithviraj yesterday released, right? Dhakad release. So these are movies which are of recent vintage. So that for me will be the way in which I would interpret the situation.
Right. So you might see peaks getting bigger in terms of the cinema going experience, bigger budgets, bigger glory for the actors. Another question coming in from Minina Jirage. How do you see the future of content rentals panning out? There are platforms which give access to only the title you want to watch. So again, the question of the pricing model is like, give it for free and charge advertising, give it for the price that Netflix charges, be somewhere in the middle, or do different. NBA, for example, even says, come and watch only the fourth quarter of an interesting match and pay only $1 or something, right? So how do you see that panning out?
So I do believe that there will be opportunities for each one of these to find their own niche, and there will actually be several models as I look at the future of this whole thing emerging. I think the future may consist not only streaming but several playbooks. So as far as storytelling and entertainment needs are concerned, they may best be addressed by powerful direct-to-consumer streaming aggregator brands like Netflix with a subscription-driven business model. So streaming services may also evolve to embrace a tier-based pricing and a boutique model, right? If you look at news and sports, these needs may be satisfied by existing top broadcaster brands like Disney, Star Sports, etc., because they are driven by ads and affiliate fees as the revenue model. Factual entertainment, what Discovery, etc. give, knowledge and education, that is the one that may best be addressed by search-driven YouTube with a business model of ads. And unique brand and family needs is what will be satisfied with a unique media and entertainment conglomerate like Disney with a direct-to-consumer model driven by subscription. So everyone else, to my opinion, may be relegated to being niche players and resellers with subscriptions, with ads, and with content sales.
Right. Kiran Teja has a question around regional OTT platforms. What is your take on AHA? Like there are regional GEC and Hindi GEC in television. Do you think OTT also will shape up into a similar manner? There's a case of Stage OTT, which recently got some venture funding, and they have specialization languages in Haryanavi and Rajasthani. So very unique. So do you see more and more of this happening?
Yeah, for sure. more and more and very many, because that's how markets around the world across industries always evolve. Thank you for that question. I think an important question. Languages are traveling the distance. We are now for the first time really realizing, I mean, I'm sure that over 5 years, Netflix, Amazon Prime, etc., should have and would have known me as a consumer, right? And Hindi and English are the only primary mediums for me. But today, as soon as I open, right, there is at least 70% of my screen which is dotted with South Indian actors and South Indian offerings. Why? Because I have watched KGF, I have watched Triple R, I have watched them in Hindi, right? But that is where it is now becoming a universal world where the consumer does not discriminate. I have an English newspaper that I consume. I may actually be watching news in Hindi. I may, however, when I'm searching, all my internet searches will be in English. I'll be reading everything in English, right? Not reading everything in Hindi. But when it comes to entertainment, I consume Hindi content gladly, happily, without any scruples, right? Without any compunctions. So this is where the consumer is the one who decides. And because the consumer increasingly wants to have entertainment content in one's own language also over and above the Hollywood, Spanish, Italian content, we are truly a global consumer now. And to that extent, global, national, regional, local, all kinds of content will entice us, and there will be a business model around all of them.
Great. In terms of consuming your own content in your own language, at least some data from the world of cricket, till around 2010, 12, 90% of cricket was consumed in English because nothing was served well in other languages and definitely not beyond Hindi. Today, it's the other way around. It's 80 to 90% in non-English and 10 to 20% English. It's the same content, but in different languages and customized for different audiences.
Yeah.
So certainly the way to go. We'll take probably one or two more questions and then hand it back to you to sum it out.
Yeah.
There is a question from Kiran again on convergence of various content ecosystems coming together.
Yeah.
How will that take place? For example, ZEE5 is providing films, news, music on the platform. Netflix is acting as a games publisher through the platform. So someone like me who's a fan of cricket is consuming cricket across television, podcasts, news, cricketers' favorite music playlists on Spotify. So different ways to engage with the same IP. How do you see that shaping out, both for creators and for platforms?
Yeah, I think it has partially been covered in the presentation. Those challenges are there to navigate, and what will determine all of it is how engaging on the one hand your content is. What is the ROI on that kind of content? Are you able to pinpoint it? Are there measurement systems validating that engagement is for real? And finally, is there a business model to it? Is the cost of creation of that kind of content not prohibitive enough for you to get into that zone? I think everything will be a derivative of the business plan and the business strategy and the business positioning.
Right.
I saw somewhere in the chat, can the students ask questions to the panelists and hosts? By all means, students can ask questions. I just wanted to quickly say, yeah.
Yeah, and we are picking up questions from the chat. So any more questions, please quickly shoot them out. I think we'll probably move on to the last couple of questions. Has the OTT industry hit maturity? Will platforms have to re-strategize or focus on a different core? I don't know what different core means, but certainly do they need to focus more and experiment less? Are we at that stage, or are we still at a stage that we have time to experiment and learn and grow?
Yeah, very important question. No, definitely not. In fact, it still is in a stage of experimentation on the one hand, as far as content and business models are concerned. It is not maturity. Maturity will be on the day when you will see consolidation and Professor Jagdish Shetter's rule of 3 coming into being, with a 40 plus minus number of players fighting it out, with 5 broad content creators fighting it out with broadcasters, with what have you, right? It is very clearly and the size is not big. A $5 billion market size is not big. So why it is happening is not a conundrum for me. I am clear that it is happening because everyone realizes, and I'm moving a little bit out of the OTT space to say, if the name of the business is aggregation of consumers, engagement of consumers, and monetization of consumers, it is not only true of media and entertainment businesses, it is also true for all modern age platform businesses. Even Uber is in the same business.
Right.
Uber's engagement is a utilitarian engagement of ensuring my travel from point A to point B. But fundamentally, it is in the business of aggregating of consumers, engagement of consumers through satisfaction of that need, which in the case of a media and entertainment company becomes content. In the case of an Airbnb becomes a lodging facility. In the case of a ride-hailing company becomes that, successful execution of that ride. And finally, monetization of that engagement. Now, if you look at aggregation of consumers, the venture fund model tells us that either you have to be a geo to perpetually pump a $25 billion to in 3 years go on to become a 360 million odd number of consumers that you aggregate, or you will have a venture funding line. So it's something which has been solved. As far as the monetization of engagement is concerned, across all businesses, venture funds only pump in money when they can see the path to profitability, not profitability today, but a path to profitability. It is the engagement bit which is the most challenging, especially in the case of media and entertainment companies, because even non-media and entertainment companies are today realizing one of the best ways to hold on to consumers is by offering cutting edge state of the art content which keeps them engaged. So a Zomato experimenting with content, Ola coming out with its own videos, all of that are attempts to be able to engage the consumer, and that is where content is going to be a differentiator.
Right. I think excellent question around Apple winning the best picture at Oscar for the movie Coda. There's a content arms race. Everybody's pumping in billion, like I said, $70 billion across the top 10 players, perhaps top 5 players in the US. Certainly, with the rights of sports media, say across NFL, which is $100 billion over 10 years, IPL, which has moved to $6 billion over 5 years. Content cost for the best, so the creamy layer is going up and up and up, which will probably lead to the rule of three or four players consolidating, and it will probably become like the global big tech, where it's Facebook, Google, Amazon, etc., or become like the global big food, which is like Nestle and Unilever and few others consolidating. Would be great to hear your views on what is the future, what are the possible futures from here, what should we expect over the next 2 to 5 years in the OTT space and the media space in general, and what should we keep our eyes open for?
Very, very briefly, I will answer that question. I think the future of TV, like I said earlier, may consist of not only streaming, but several playbooks, which means the streaming revolution that was expected to break barriers of the TV industry seems to be morphing into a lot more like the traditional television itself, right? So this is where those different needs may be addressed by different kind of playbooks that different players may offer depending upon what the business model is. And in this case, Netflix as a case study comes to the mind, right? Netflix has been a classic case of pivoting. It has been a classic case of starting out as a DVD by mail player, right? And at a point in time, all the advertisers and taking cash, the earlier model which was taking cash from the advertisers and deals with pay TV operators, completely junked. And in the process, by buying what the greed of media giants kind of got them to slight Netflix as a raddiwala or a scrap collector who was willing to pay for rerun rights for a product that had outlived its shelf life. The biggest land grab that Netflix went on to do in the history of media ever, right? And that this minion will one day go on to challenge the supremacy and the whole existence of pay TV was something that was completely unimaginable. So from a DVD by mail to a 2003 starting the subscription service to a 2007 metamorphosis into a modern television network to a 2013 original content and now those Emmys and various awards. So streaming has clearly changed how we consume TV, but not what we consume. Streaming has enabled distribution to be taken away from the cable. What then was looked at is actually a case of distribution disruption in the industry. In a world of multi-platform consumers, distribution domination is a fragile competitive differentiator at best. So the model will consist of, the future will consist of whosoever, wherever is able to identify the right pain point and create a rightful ROI driven model to finally be able to emerge the winner. A race to a pole position will of course work the best, which means those who want to aggregate the more consumers, keep them engaged and find the monetization plan will be the winners.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Piyush. I think we can keep speaking and hearing from you for the next few hours, but we are unfortunately out of time.
Yeah.
So I'll thank you so much for taking time out, sharing your well-informed and wise views on how the OTT space is evolving, what is the playbook and what are the possibilities. And once again, thank you to the alumni management cell, Anurag, Vidhi, everyone for putting in the effort to organizing this session. Anurag, I hand over the platform to you to close out the session with any thoughts that you have to round it out.
So thank you, Piyush and Gaurav. I think Piyush, packed a lot of what we wanted to hear in a very short span of time. There were a lot of, nuggets of pieces of wisdom that were like really compressed into a very short span of time. And I'm sure this space, of course, is a very, very vast space and evolving very, very rapidly. And, like the last question sort of brought the whole thing into focus, as in everybody's looking into how it's going to shape out in the future. And that's where the entire focus is. But it's a very, very exciting space. It's a very complex space, and it's a space that has captured a lot of attention. And interestingly, it's a space that captures attention of not just the business players, but people like you and me, and who are not even connected with the industry. We are, as consumers, we are very, very ardent and very involved consumers of the content that is created, right? And there's a very, very secular consumption trend there, where people in the urban areas, rural areas, people may just have a mobile phone as their ownership, that they can say that this is all I own, and they would be consuming that kind of content. So it's a very interesting space. It's a very dynamic space, and it's evolving very rapidly. But Piyush, thank you for doing an excellent job of compacting all of that into a very short span of time. And I'm sure Gaurav, you had a lot more questions, and audience had a lot more questions as well. But perhaps we will revisit some of those things later and have another session with you, Piyush. So thank you, Piyush and Gaurav, and thanks for the audience who will join in. And we will continue to bring more such sessions to you, and see you again soon.
Yep. Thank you, Anurag. Thank you, Gaurav. Appreciate it.